Hello channels, welcome to the Jaredson channel. My name is JFC. Today on this edition of The Interview, we have a special, awesome guest here. We have the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. How you doing?
I'm doing very good, buddy. How are you?
I'm just, still have no words.
That's okay.
But if you want, introduce yourself.
I'm Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, and it's good to be here with you.
Yeah, it's good to be here with you. So first of all, what inspired you to get in professional wrestling?
What inspired me to become a professional wrestler was my dad. I had a very strong relationship with my stepfather, Mike DiBiase, who was also a professional wrestler, and he was just a great role model and a very good dad. And I was one of those kids that grew up wanting to be just like my dad. That was my inspiration.
Awesome. So, did you come up with the name, the $1 Million Man, or someone else?
Actually, the idea, the concept for the $1 Million Man was actually the idea of Vince McMahon. But in describing the character to me when we were talking about it, he said, this guy is a very proud, arrogant, rich guy who, by virtue of his wealth, thinks he can buy anybody or anything. Mm-hmm. And he said, he said, everybody hates a guy like that. And I said, yeah, I even hate guys like that. And he said, well, we really haven't given him a name yet. And I said, well, he sounds like $1 million man to me. And he said, $1 million man it is. That's how it happened. Not to be mistaken for the $6 million man.
Yeah, when did the $6 Million Man get released?
Oh gosh, long before that. But I tell you what, if I keep having surgeries and they keep giving me new body parts, I have new knees and I've had 2 surgeries on my neck, well, I might become the $6 million man.
So when you was wrestling in the WWF and other companies, who was your favorite person to have a rivalry with? Who was your favorite opponent, basically?
It's hard to pick one. Now, once I went to the WWF, I loved wrestling Hulk Hogan, because anytime I was wrestling Hulk Hogan, I was making a lot of money. Because he was the big star. But I really enjoyed wrestling Jake Roberts, Jake the Snake. I really had a good time working with Macho Man Randy Savage. And I really enjoyed wrestling Bret the Hitman Hart. But as far as favorite matches, that's even harder. Some of my favorite matches were matches that I had when I was becoming a star, like guys that helped me become a good wrestler, like wrestling Harley Race for the World Championship in St. Louis, the first major main event of my life, which was in the early 80s. And then Terry Funk, a guy named Dick Murdoch, all those guys, guys that helped shape my career. Those were guys that I really enjoyed working with. But again, like I said, Jake Roberts, I loved wrestling Jake, and I loved, like I said, Bret the Hitman Hart and Hogan. Those guys made my job easy. The hardest matches I had were, well, in a hard match, when we say hard match, like people say, what was your greatest rivalry? Well, again, we're talking about, it's not a real rivalry. It's television. It's a show. Mm-hmm. So what makes a hard match is when you wrestle somebody that's very hard to work with. In other words, what made my job hard is wrestling somebody that wasn't very good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, that way I had to take on more of the role of do this, do this, do this, do this. And I would think that probably my hardest match would have been with Virgil. You know, because Virgil was not real smart.
Do you ever run into Virgil at Comic-Cons? Conventions?
Not lately. I used to, but not anymore. He kind of got outlawed from the Comic-Cons for doing stupid stuff, and I just won't talk about that.
So what do you think about the state that the wrestling world is in right now?
It's just everything changes and evolves. The wrestling industry is not the same industry that I was in. You know, fans come up to me all the time and they say, you know, there's just so much more drama. You know, the show is more talking than wrestling, and you know, and I have a tendency to agree with that. And but by the same token, the company continues to thrive and go on, and they have a whole new fan base that is very comfortable with what it is today. Now, the other thing is that had wrestling not changed, had Vince McMahon not come along and did with wrestling what he did, wrestling would have died by now. Wrestling would be gone by now, because wrestling could not have existed and continued to exist on a regional basis when you turn on your television and everybody has cable and you've got access to 300 channels, and there's so many other things competing for the entertainment dollar, you know, because all the wrestling shows that were done during the regional years of wrestling, well, when you turned on the TV to watch wrestling, the wrestling crowd on television was 2 sets of bleachers. You know, Vince took it, and every time he turned on the TV, it's not 2 sets of bleachers; it's a whole coliseum full of people. See what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So, in that respect, had Vince not come along when he did, you know, you'd have seen the very slow death of the wrestling business. So, so there's good and bad, you know, and I think that with the new training facility that they have down in Orlando, I think they're doing a lot of great things down there, and I see, like when I watch NXT, I see that flavor of the kind of like the old style, and hopefully that's going to start making its way back to what wrestling is. But, you know, to answer your question, yeah, it's changed, and because I'm from that old school, I tend to like the old school, but I don't want to be those old guys that says,
Yep.
You know, I'm not gonna, you know, everything evolves and changes, and I very much support the company today. I'm going to WrestleMania this year. I'll be there. Matter of fact, I got a phone call today. It said, bring your $1 million belt. And I said, why don't you bring my $1 million belt? The one you got's a lot more expensive than the one I have. Anyway.
So far, you've been in Kentucky for like how long now? A week?
Not yet. It'll be a week Thursday night.
So far, what do you think of Kentucky?
I love Kentucky. Kentucky's, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful states in the country. You know, I'm all about, you know, and I love horses, and you know, I like just the whole bluegrass thing, man. I'm a big fan. I'm a fan of the University of Kentucky. I had the chance to meet Coach Cal back in November. I did an event actually where he and I emceed a comedy event at Rupp Arena, and so yeah, I'm a fan. And by the way, the other thing is, I don't know if you know this or not, but you know Sting?
Yeah.
His son is on the University of Kentucky football team.
Really?
Yeah. Did you know that? Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's pretty good too.
I might have to look into that.
Yeah.
Is there any stars that you wish you fought back in WWF?
No, I don't think there's anybody I missed. You know, people always ask me if I ever wrestled Andre. I said no. I was smart enough to be his tag team partner. I never had a single match against Andre, but I was in a lot of matches with him as a partner. But no, there's nobody that I missed. And I can't think of anybody today because, to be honest with you, I love wrestling, and wrestling is a very, very big part of my life, but wrestling doesn't define Ted DiBiase today. My vocation in life now, I'm a minister, and that's what absorbs and takes most of my time. A lot of times fans will ask me, did you see the show this week? And I go, no. I said, I haven't watched the show in quite some time. And they go, you don't watch the show? And I ask them this question, I go, if you had been a doctor for 30 years, would you go home every day and watch Dr. Oz? Well, of course not, So I'm the same way. I had my run. I was happy with the time that I had there. And now I've gone on and doing other things, but I tune in from time to time, but I'm not up to date with everything they're doing.
Have you ever met any deaf wrestlers?
Deaf wrestlers? Yeah, but none that I personally wrestled. The one that I knew was during my father's era, and his name was Salento Rodriguez. And he was a deaf wrestler. I've actually seen a couple of guys that I've seen like a one-legged wrestler. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Before you got in the WWF, before you joined the big professional wrestling, did you have any gimmicks like before you joined WWF?
What do you mean gimmicks?
I mean like before you got into WWF, before you were the $1 Million Man.
Well, before I was the $1 Million Man, I was simply me. I was Ted DiBiase, and I wrestled in primarily the better part of the first 12 years of my career. I was in Mid-South Wrestling under Cowboy Bill Watts, who, in my opinion, was one of the greatest minds in wrestling. He studied under Eddie Graham, and he really, knew the psychology of our business. So most of those first 12 years I was with him. I started with him, and I was with that company right before I went to WWF. But along the way, I went to Kansas City for a little while. I went to Amarillo, Texas for a little while, and I went to Georgia Championship Wrestling. I went to Georgia for a while. But of all of those territories, Mid-South was my favorite.
Your son, Ted DiBiase Jr.
Yeah.
Is there any reason why he dropped out of WWE?
Yeah. A lot of people think that he was released, but he wasn't. They wanted to re-sign him, and he chose not to because, well, he basically found out what I tried to tell him was true, that the wrestling business is going to demand an extreme amount of your time. And he is a husband and a father, and he realized that to be in the wrestling business would demand much more of his time. And he basically said to me, it won't be fair to my wife or my child because I'll be gone all the time. Mm-hmm. And so he chose not to resign. And so I was very proud of that. I loved wrestling. I loved doing what I did, but the price of fame, which is the name of the documentary being done about me right now, the price of fame is high. And it's not what it's all, it's not what a lot of people think. It's not all glitz and glamour.
Well,
There's just one more thing before I go. Everybody's got a price for the $1 Million Man.
If you know what's good for you, subscribe to the JRC channel here on YouTube. Check him out. If you need graphic work, hit him up too. He's really good. JRCchannel.com?
yeah, you got it right.
JRCchannel.com. Get it up, folks. You know what to do.